What's up, everybody? John TheMorgile here. Gonna do a flat earth debunk, rebunk sort of video. I just wanted to go over something that I found really sort of disheartening or maybe odd. But if you go and YouTube search, and maybe it's different for everybody, but I don't know, I doubt it. If you YouTube search flat earth proof, what I get, anyway, and I'll do it again right now just to show you. Should get the same results. Yeah, basically the same thing except for the ad at the top that has nothing to do with it at all. Makes no sense, but there you go. Okay, so what you get is first and foremost, this man launches himself in self-made rocket to prove flat earth theory, which is this rocket launch. I think he got up to not even 2,000 feet. I think it was like 1,800. Yeah, 1,875 foot, which is not very high at all. You know, very small aircrafts go much higher than that just at takeoff. That's it's not going to prove anything one way or another, and it's obviously, at least in my opinion, some sort of a publicity stunt to at least some degree or another, right? So at best, it's just sort of a publicity stunt for this crazy Mad Mike Hughes to go do a stunt and make a name for himself. But at the same time, he attached flat Earth to this, and attached flat Earth to sort of a cockamamie plan and jump, and very dangerous thing to do, in my opinion. Doing this for such a dare and attaching that to flat Earth and proving flat Earth by launching his rocket less than 2,000 feet into the air is just absolutely ridiculous, one way or another. And I think that he has plans to do another launch later on from a platform that is attached to like high altitude balloons and launching the rocket from a super high altitude. I think that's what he plans to do in the future to prove flat Earth, and this is sort of a baby step towards that end goal. But I would just mention that it's my contention that if you try to launch a steam-powered rocket from super high in altitude, you know, above the thick, dense atmosphere in the troposphere, for lack of better phrases, you're not going to have any sort of atmospheric pressure for the rocket thruster to push off of. So the steam rocket is reliant upon the back pressure of the atmosphere. And it is my prediction, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's my prediction that you're not going to be able to, rocket power or any sort of jet propulsion is not going to work in super low pressure environments, as is suspected to be the case up in the area where, you know, he would allegedly be launching this thing from on the second launch, or the future launch, if such a future launch ever does indeed occur in the future. The whole setup of this event to me was extremely fishy. I did a video that covers it pretty well in detail, Flat Earth Illuminati confirmed, but basically the summation of it is that this guy, Mad Mike Hughes, who was allegedly a flat earther all along and was planning to do this launch as a flat earther, well, one day he saw a billboard that says research flat earth, and it gave him the idea then to essentially bilk flat earthers for their money. A lot of money, I forget the exact amount. It was at least $1,000 or maybe a few $1,000s to put a sticker on the thing, a big decal that says something like research flat earth. And you know, that may seem all well and good at face value, but if you think about it for 10 seconds, any flat earther would, first of all, not have to see a billboard to get the idea to ask flat earthers for money, to put a sticker on it. And frankly, I think any flat earther would put flat earth stickers all over the thing regardless, and, you know, maybe try to raise money with the flat earth community. But the point is it was very fishy to me that one flat earther would need to see a billboard in order to sort of trigger themselves into this action. And it just so happens to be a billboard that, you know, fairly well-known flat earth platform, IPS, Infinite Plane Society, raised the funds for to put up. And of course there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, like when he did the interview explaining the billboard, or one of the billboards he used someone else's name, you know, that's prominent in the flat earth, you know, a few different times. So it's just a big, the whole thing to me is a fishy fiasco. And this rocket launch, you know, it's being used, it's the top search for flat earth proof on YouTube. The top search result is it's from 5 days ago, so maybe it's more relevant because it's so new. But it's also the third search result and the 10th search result, and yeah, this one here, the 11th, the 12th, right? So it's the whole rocket launch thing is being, it's given dominance of this pretty key search term, you would think, when flat earth is burgeoning, as we all sort of recognize that it is, that YouTube would place first and foremost, as well as peppered throughout, this, in my opinion, just absolutely bogus, fishy fiasco publicity stunt that I do not, me as a flat earth proponent, do not want my name or my goals or intentions attached to this folly at all. And I just see it, you know, if too many flat earthers get on board with this for some reason to prove flat earth, which I don't, you know, that seems sort of ridiculous to me. But if that does happen and the thing potentially ends in catastrophic failure, or it fails to prove anything, which it won't prove anything anyway, then it makes flat earth in the public eye appear to be a bunch of idiots, frankly, and that isn't the case, as we well know. So that I thought was pretty interesting, because that's just given absolute dominance for this flat earth proof search term, at least for me. And I watch a lot of different flat earth content creators, and I don't see any of the ones that I typically watch in the top even pages. But I'll just give you a summation of a couple of these. The first video, so the second search result, the first video that is not the Mad Mike rocket launch, is this one here. And more or less in summary, it's a 17-minute long video, and more or less what you get are like pictures and time-lapse videos with just seemingly random audio clips from assorted movies and films.
Emotions, those morning injections, take them away.
When people have the freedom to choose, they choose wrong.
Tomorrow morning, skip your injection. I've been doing it for months. What do you feel?
He's not usually like this.
I'm surprised you're not more worried about him. I would be. Bring up Jonas's activity.
He's inquisitive.
You should know better than anyone.
The way things look and the way things are very different. Watch. There is no way for me to prepare you for the truth.
It's just sort of a very bizarre clippets of audio files from movies played in the background of like sunrise time lapses. And then like you have that video that everybody's seen with that Indian, you know, like Southeast Asian looking guy dropping things, like dropping different objects into like water and just dropping things. No real narrative at all. There's no compelling argument or case made for flat Earth. It's just sort of nothing to do with flat Earth proof as far as I'm concerned. And you know, people are usually only gonna, if they a lot of times are gonna look at something, they'll YouTube search it if they want to watch a video, or Google it, right? Same thing. And they'll just look at the top one or two things, and everything else pretty much doesn't exist unless you know, unless they go deeper into it, right? So assuming that people will at least do that, and of course you've got the rocket launch thing again, and then the fourth video search, the second video that is not the rocket launch, is this one. And basically within the first 45 seconds, the host of the video claims, he sort of gives a disclaimer that the last Flat Earth video that they produced did very well, so they decided to do another one.
The last video we did really well on our channel.
So they're making their intentions very clear. And of course they say, while the Flat Earth argument is compelling, there are still a few Flat Earth debunks that he, the host, believes in.
There is still a lot of debunks to this theory that I still do believe in, regardless.
So, you know, the whole thing right off the bat is sort of very wishy-washy. There's no firm stance or any sort of bold or cogent argument made for the Flat Earth. And it plays different clips, like of Joe Rogan, and multiple times clips of like Neil deGrasse making a fool of himself by, you know, regarding the oblate spheroid.
So you spin, you know, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. It gets wider in the middle, and so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator.
By, you know, regarding the oblate spheroid, multiple times peppered throughout this fourth search result, the second video that's not the rocket launch. And there are, you know, in that fourth one, there may be a few points made in some of the snippets used by the host or by the content creator to make this hodgepodge video, which really fails to make any sort of coherent case for Flat Earth, let alone prove Flat Earth whatsoever.
It's not actually a sphere. So it's not actually a sphere. It's not actually a sphere.
All I'm saying is, when I look at all of it, when I look at the photographic evidence, or I look at the fact that we haven't been back since 1972, when I look at the fact that no humans except the Apollo astronauts have ever gone through the Van Allen radiation belt, the fact that no one's even done a flyby around the moon since then, it seems weird to me. When I look at the press conference and I see Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins nervous and weird and obviously like being deceptive after they came back.
You can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness. There are
Spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. It gets
like these from NASA. This
Access, and that leaves
a curved
Right.
Earth.
So moving down beyond that, the fifth or sixth search result, this would be the third video that's not the rocket launch, is this one. And I don't even have to put any notes on it because I watched this a few months ago when it had just come out. This one has 12 million views, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's a parody. It has nothing to do with proving Flat Earth. It's beyond. Don't even waste your time watching it unless you want to, like, I don't know, get suicidal thoughts. It's awful, but you know, feel free to watch it. Then of course you have more rocket launch, and then you have Armored Skeptic, who is in the business of dissing flat earthers. So for some reason, and I will have you know that I put flat earth proof as a search term in all my videos, pretty much, and you won't find any of those, of course, in the top. So you'll find Armored Skeptic, and he's dissing Dave Moore, allegedly Dave. So that's absolutely not flat earth proof. More the rocket, more Mad Mike the rocket, the rocket, the rocket. 5 ways you can tell for yourself the earth is not flat. How we know the earth isn't flat. So finally, and after we get this really, really weak lineup of so-called flat earth proofs, which is, you know, maybe a dozen and a half videos that are just awful. I'm sorry, but they're awful. There's nothing in here that you could possibly glean in the top dozen and a half videos until you start getting into the ones where they say how we know the earth isn't flat. Now, I don't think I may have watched this second one that's 4 minutes, but I'm pretty sure I have not watched this one from Life Noggin, but maybe I have. And I will go ahead and put a link in the description. And of course, we'll claim fair use on this use of this content, as we are taking a fresh look at the subject material and for discussional, educational, observational, and scientific purposes.
Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Right now, you're probably watching this video from somewhere on Earth, that big, round, beautiful planet you humans call home. But how do you know the Earth is round? Your senses would tell you that it's flat. After all, if you stand in a large field, it actually looks pretty flat. And if you walk through that field, it doesn't feel like you're going over a curve. Could it?
Okay, so I would just say that I'm in agreement so far, although I would also state that we obviously are not spinning along a curve either. That would be plainly obvious. That would be something that we could certainly tell if the Earth was spinning at, close to 1,000 miles an hour in the United States, way faster than the speed of sound, and dropping along an inverse square curve. That would be painfully obvious, especially when you get into things like aviation, manned flight. So, with you so far on this.
Be that the Earth is actually flat? Well,
okay, and so of course they put this sort of caricature of flat Earth where you have edges and a bottom and space, and of course you're just going to walk off the edge and fall off the edge, which is absolutely ridiculous. There may not be an edge. I don't see any reason for there to be an edge that falls off into space. I don't think that's possible because, well, space doesn't exist. Space, what we've been conditioned to think is an infinitude of galaxies and planets, is nothing more than lights in the night sky that go in circuits concentric with the North Pole star Polaris in the north, and they also do some sort of conga line rotund pattern in the south in the opposite direction. Although that is claimed to be proof of a spinning spherical Earth, it's nothing more than tricks of the lights in the night sky, probably having to do with the Earth's magnetic field as well as refraction. This whole image of the Earth being a disk in space is really antithetical to what I see the flat Earth as being, because we're conditioned to believe that the Earth is a sphere flying through space, and all the other things in space are spheres, so why shouldn't the Earth be a sphere? But the thing is nobody has any sort of direct first-hand evidence that the things in the sky are terra firma spherical worlds that you can walk around on. That's fantasy. The Earth is the physical plane, and what's above us in the sky is blue skies like sapphire in the day, and stars that are lights in the sky at night, and the moon that goes through phases. Now, a lot of globe heads claim that the moon's phases prove that the Earth is a sphere for some reason, but frankly, we can see the full moon during the broad daylight or the crescent moon in the middle of the night, neither of which observations would be physically, geometrically possible in the heliocentric theory. You would never get a line of sight towards the full moon during broad daylight on the hypothetically spherical Earth. Again, that would be geometrically impossible, so you can't use the moon's phases or eclipses, lunar eclipses, to prove the sphericity of the Earth. But for this anti-flat earther or anti-flat Earth proponent glober, first they must create a caricature or a straw man effigy of flat Earth to destroy. So they create a false picture of what flat earthers believe and what we can prove, and characterizes it as this disc coin-like thing in space that you can fall off the edges, and it's a disc out in infinite space, right? That's what they're going for, because of course that's going to be debunked. You can't have discs flying around in space. It doesn't. The flat Earth reality doesn't jive, is incompatible altogether, mutually exclusive with the idea of infinite space. So to think that there must be some edge to the physical plane, there may be an edge, there may be a boundary, but for all we know, it may continue on indefinitely, infinitely. We don't know. So the day that globe proponents show me the edge of space, then I'll show you the edge of the Earth, okay? Because it's an unknown value, and it's something that at this point is not obtainable, and that's in large part to things like the Antarctic Treaty, which make it pretty difficult to do traveling down to Antarctica. Not that many people would want to go there in the first place. It is very inhospitable there, much colder by average and by record than the North Pole, because there's definitely not this bilateral symmetry in the northern and southern polar areas as you would necessarily have on a globe. But that's sort of neither here nor there. So let's continue with this debunk-rebunk, because I just wanted to point out that they're psychologically painting a picture. And this isn't for flat earthers. This is for people who are being introduced to the topic. They're drawing back on those memories that we all have of being taught in school that 500 years ago everyone thought the earth was flat, and if you sailed too far you'd fall off the edge. And everybody that I know that's within a certain age group, will tell you that they were painted this picture in their mind of stupid pilgrims 500 years ago that thought the earth was flat and would fall off the edge if they went too far. And that is that's associated with being very silly for some reason. And it is sort of silly, I think, but that's the idea that they're drumming up, conjuring up from the well-known federally mandated curriculum.
Let's try an experiment. Say you're standing in a field outside of Chicago. If the Earth is flat, you should be able to see southwest and see some of the tallest points in the United States.
Okay, so they're making the claim that if the Earth was flat, you could see forever, basically. So you could see the Rocky Mountains from, I think he said Chicago, and he probably goes on, but this is absolute nonsense. You have the laws of perspective, which make distant objects appear to get smaller and smaller to the degree that even the largest of objects will appear to get infinitely small, so as the human eye cannot register the apparent angular size of the object. It's too small for the little light-sensitive cells in your eye to pick up on. So for this claim is just absolute nonsense. You cannot see infinitely. First of all, because of perspective, that solves it. You're not going to see the Rocky Mountains on the flat Earth from Chicago because they're so distant that the Rocky Mountains would be smaller than one of those flowers in the foreground. It would get so small that it would be undetectable. Not to mention, of course, the atmosphere becomes thicker and thicker with distance, so as to become opaque and blue during the day, and of course very dark and non-visible at night. So this is, again, just an absolute nonsense caricature of flat Earth, and it's preying on most people's inability to think outside of what's being presented to them. And when I was first presented with this argument, it seemed for an instant to be sort of a gotcha situation for flat Earth, but it's absolutely nothing at all, because you have perspective, you have the accumulative opacity of the atmosphere, and then you actually have things like refraction as well, atmospheric refraction, which would cause the inbound light from the mountains, the distant mountains, to tend towards the ground, towards the higher density gradient. So that would generally be towards the ground. And this is just an absolutely insane, ridiculous argument. But remember, this came up as one of the top, like, fourth or fifth video on YouTube for my search of flat Earth proof. So that's just absolutely ridiculous.
the Rocky Mountains. But the thing is, you can't. That's because of the curvature of the Earth. You'll notice a similar problem if you stand on a seashore and try to watch a boat sail away. After a while, it will disappear from view. And not only that, but the bottom of the boat will vanish before the top as it goes over what's called the horizon line, the place.
Oh my goodness. So now they're coming up with the argument, and this is really excellent flat earth proof, I'll tell you. People trying to debunk the reality of the earth being a plane with arguments that we've heard since we were in kindergarten.
Watch a boat sail away. After a while, it will disappear from view. And not only that, but the bottom of the boat will vanish before the top as it goes over what's called the horizon line, the place.
So this is exactly what would be expected upon a plane. As the boat travels away, the taller portions of the boat will apparently drop lower towards your line of sight, towards the vanishing point, proportionally with distance. And the side parts of the boat will also tend towards your center line of sight, assuming that the boat's traveling directly away from you. And of course, the bottom is closer to your line of sight than the top or the sides, assuming that it's traveling in front of you and directly away from you. The bottom of it, first of all, will be obstructed by the physical water. So even the slightest ripple, say 50 yards away, will cover up an entire bottom of a ship that's, say, 1,000 yards away. So you have sort of a false horizon even with the undulating water. But even that aside, the bottom of the ship is at your line of sight. So the bottom of the ship that is invisible and underwater cannot appear to tend towards your line of sight. So you get the optical illusion that the bottom of the ship is going down, but it is just the top and the sides going in towards your line of sight. The bottom, if you could see it, would be going in towards your line of sight proportionally with distance. However, you cannot see the bottom because it's under the water. And of course, you do get false horizons by any sort of undulating waves in the foreground in between your eye and the boat, especially when it gets out to distance, because at a certain distance, the entire boat has essentially converged to your point line of sight. So it's no longer, you're not really seeing it in perspective per se. You're seeing something that is prone to mirage effects like Fata Morganas, and just we've all seen the reflective sort of line, reflective barrier that's always hovers above the horizon when you're able to zoom in super tight in on distant horizonscapes. So this argument that ships going over the horizon somehow proves a spherical Earth is ridiculous. Perspective alone does indeed very nicely solve this problem. However, to add to that, you also have atmospheric refraction, which plays a huge role on what light does. And it may seem like that's overstating it, but go try to spear a fish when you're standing waist deep in water with a big pole spear. If you aim for where you see the fish, you're never going to hit it. You have to aim for where you have to account for that refraction of the light. And it's the very same thing that's going on with the image of the boat. When it gets to a certain distance, the inbound light to your eye is traveling through that dense atmosphere, and it eventually curves down towards the water at certain distances, and it can curve very rapidly. Light can, just by traveling through either dense, more dense or less dense, more cold or more hot medium, drastically will change, and different types of media will drastically change the refraction index of light. So that adds to the illusion that the boat is going down, because it's not the boat that's going around a curve, it's the light that's curving down. So it does add to the effect. And in fact, the further the boat gets, the atmosphere begins to magnify the image of the distant object slightly. the greater the distance, the greater the effect. But of course, unless an object is a super bright light source, you're not going to be able to see it at certain distances because the atmosphere is just too dense. And the refraction takes over, and it basically tackles that light down to the ocean water or down to the earth at certain distances. Right, so back to this awful video that is one of the top search results for flat earth proof on YouTube.
Place where the sky meets the earth. For someone who is 6 feet tall, the horizon line is only 3 miles away, but the higher up you are, the farther you can see over the earth's curve. This is why standing on a tall mountain might allow you to see over 100 miles, while standing in a field will only let you see a short distance. It also means that taller people can see slightly farther than shorter people. Good thing my animator can make me any height. See? I'm like that one ant dude. The thing is, none of this is new information. We've known about the planet's curvature for over 2,000 years. The ancient Greeks figured out that the Earth is round based on several.
Wait a minute.
The horizon line.
Okay, there isn't even an argument here. He says that they're 6 feet tall, and then it doesn't matter how tall you are. Let's just hear this again, because he goes from just basically talking about perspective to we've always known the Earth is a globe, as if he had just proven something, unless I missed it.
Is only 3 miles away, but the higher up you are, the farther you can see over the Earth's curve.
Oh, the higher up you are, the farther you can see over the Earth's curve. Well, that's assuming there is a curve, which there isn't. The higher up you are, the farther you can see because your field of view increases. If you are 3 inches tall, your field of view is not going to be very far because you're down on the ground. But if you go from 3 inches to 7 feet tall, and you can see more of the, say, 1,000 square foot room that you're in, does that make the 1,000 square foot room a sphere?
This is why standing on a tall mountain might allow you to see over 100 miles, while standing in a field will only let you see a short distance.
Actually, standing on a mountain, you can see 273 miles, as was taken in this world record for long-distance landscape photography. Pic de Fenestrellas and Bar de Acrins, if I'm saying those right. Yeah, 273 miles, but unfortunately that would be impossible if the Earth were a sphere. If the Earth were a sphere with a radius of nearly 4,000 miles, we would expect to see curvature of 8 inches per mile squared. And of course you have to take in the observer height and the target distance and basically figure it up. And the tip top of the tallest peak should be, well, over a half mile below the horizon. And yet you can clearly see the entire mountain from 273 miles away, and this proves conclusively that the Earth is not a sphere. Now, if you plug these very same numbers into Debunk flat Earth calculator or Debunk Earth curvature calculator, they add in what's called standard refraction, which they claim makes all distant objects, although along a curve, vertically descending along a curve on the ball, will always appear to be resting perpendicular upon a plane because of refraction. Although the way that they're claiming refraction works, they're essentially claiming that it lifts objects many miles into the air so as to be seen from a greater distance than possible on a globe. However, that's not how refraction works, as we already know. Refraction causes inbound light to tend downwards, down towards the higher density gradient. The light slows down through the higher density gradient and thus decelerates apparently and tends towards that direction. So this is just absolute nonsense. It's absurd.
It also means that taller people can see slightly farther than shorter people.
Well, that means that taller people must be on little tiny spheres everywhere because they can see farther than short people. Because that's exactly what you just said was the deal with getting on a mountain. You can see over 100 miles. Therefore, the Earth is a sphere. Okay, so how big is the sphere that the tall person on? How much bigger is his sphere than the shorter person's sphere? Right? What are you talking about?
Good thing my animator can make me any height.
Yeah, your animator can.
See? I'm like that one ant dude. The thing is, none of this is new information. We've known about the planet's curvature for over 2,000 years.
We've known about the planet's curvature for over 2,000 years. Really? Well, that's funny because there isn't any curvature. You can test for it. You can try to measure for it. No matter how high you go, or how far you can shoot a laser, or how far you can see a mountain range, the Earth has no curvature. It isn't spherical whatsoever. So to claim that we've known for over 2,000 years of the planet's curvature is not a proof or an argument, a valid argument in any sense.
The ancient Greeks figured out that the Earth is round based on several pieces of evidence, including their observations of ships going over the horizon line.
Which is in line with the laws of perspective and is exacerbated by atmospheric refraction. Most certainly, 100%, this is demonstrable, this isn't theory. What we see with ships is exactly what you would expect upon a planar Earth, and indeed the Earth is a plane.
The scientist Aristotle, writing in 350 BCE, noted that during an eclipse the Earth makes a round shadow on the moon.
That's assuming that it is the Earth making a shadow on the moon at all, although there is direct evidence to the contrary, which is called a selenelion, and it happens peppered throughout the history of lunar eclipses, where you can see the sun and the moon in the sky during the totality of a total lunar eclipse. And of course they justify their position with these ridiculous sort of diagrams where the observer is standing in the twilight area and they're about 3,000–4,000 miles tall in order to justify them being able to see the sun and the moon at the same time during a lunar eclipse. Throughout the history of lunar eclipses, where you can see the sun and the moon in the sky during the totality of a total lunar eclipse. So this would be physically impossible if it was the Earth in between the sun and the moon. Now they claim that this is caused by refraction. They claim that we can see the sun and the moon during a total lunar eclipse in the same sky at the same time because of refraction. And this is, well, absurd because, again, you would expect the light to be driven down towards the ground. You know, it's supposedly the sun is supposedly a distant omnidirectional light. And if it's below your horizon, they're again trying to say that it's traveling up the horizon. Which, you know, whatever. So you even grant them that. It's just absolutely ridiculous that to assume that it is the Earth causing lunar eclipses because, frankly, the heliocentric model claims that spherical planets in space, but only spherical planets in space, cast very bizarre and peculiar pinpointer, stylus-like shadows, which you cannot replicate in reality. No demonstration of light and shadow with simply one light source and one obstructing object, preferably spherical object for consistency with the theory. You can never reproduce this pinpointer shadow. A shadow will either be as large as or larger than the cross-section of the object obstructing the light source. So what this means is that the moon, humoring the heliocentric model, again, that's what we're doing here, the moon is allegedly orbiting the Earth more or less along the ecliptic plane, okay? And the Earth is allegedly orbiting the sun along the ecliptic plane. Now, the moon's orbit is supposedly 5 degrees offset from that of the Earth's on the ecliptic plane. So at times, during its monthly orbit, the moon is aligned to the ecliptic plane. At other times, the moon is misaligned to the ecliptic plane at the extreme values of something like 20,000 miles either north or south of the cross-section of the Earth relative to the ecliptic plane. So the point is, though, is they claim that lunar eclipses are so rare. They're essentially exactly as rare as solar eclipses, which is odd. But they claim that the reason that lunar eclipses are as rare as we see is because of this umbra-penumbra effect, where supposedly the sunlight is coming towards the Earth at a convergent angle, and somewhere in between the sun and the Earth, that convergent angle diverges, and that's where you get this bizarre light source, this sort of divergent light source from the sun, the sunlight allegedly converging in space to cast these very peculiar and bizarre and non-replicable shadows that grow smaller and smaller proportionally with distance away from the obstruction. And during some solar eclipses, we see the moon shadow as typically 50 or 60 or 70 miles, somewhere around in there, typically. And of course, they claim that the moon is 2,000 miles in diameter. How is it possible for an object thousands of miles in radius to cast a shadow that's only 50 or 60 or 70 miles? And there have actually been a few times recorded where the eclipse signature, allegedly, the eclipse signature of the moon being less than 2 miles in diameter. So, I really would love to know how it's possible for an object that's thousands of miles in diameter to cast a shadow that is just a couple miles in diameter. It's not physically possible. That is just absolute disassociation with reality when people see this evidence and don't question the size and distance to the moon. Now, going back to this argument that is the Earth's spherical shadow casting shadows on the moon during lunar eclipses, the point I was making is that in all reality, the Earth's shadow should be at least as wide as the Earth. Because, again, while they do claim this umbra and penumbra effect where you have converging and diverging sun ray angles to cast these peculiar shadows from spherical objects in space, and spherical objects in space only, but in reality, the Earth's shadow should be a divergent conical shadow going away from the Earth if it's anything like regular lights and shadows in reality. Now, the other thing, too, and I've mentioned this before, but according to Eratosthenes, which is a flagship cornerstone argument for the globe Earth that they use almost every single time, that this guy will probably use in this video, is that the sun's rays are coming in at nearly perfect parallel angles. That's the only way that his measurements of the sun angles in Syene and Alexandria way back in the day work, is if you assume the sun's rays to be coming in at basically perfectly parallel angles to one another. Okay, so you can't have that and have the sun's rays doing this peculiar acrobatics prior to finding its way to the Earth. But this argument that the Earth is casting a shadow on the moon is just absolutely ridiculous. That does not make the Earth a sphere in space, and the selenelion is very good evidence against that as well. And no, we do not need an explanation for it for the Earth to be flat either. The Earth is flat with or without an explanation for lunar eclipses. There are lots of different things that it could be, but it is certainly not the spherical Earth casting that shadow. Couldn't possibly be.
Also realize that stars appear in different places depending on where you're standing. For example, he saw stars in Egypt that weren't visible farther north, roughly.
Okay, and that would be absolutely what you would expect upon a planar Earth where the stars are not very distant. It is only the heliocentrists who believe that the stars are millions and billions and trillions of miles away. That is not reality, that is your fantasy, and you can't use your fantasies to debunk reality.
100 years later, humans got their first measurements of the Earth's curve from another Greek mathematician, Eratosthenes. He had heard of this.
there he is, Eratosthenes. I knew he was going to bring this up because every single globe Earth proponent does. So how is it that, and we'll see that it's the sun rays must be parallel in order for his experiment to work, where he assumes the Earth is a sphere rather than understanding atmospheric refraction, because it is indeed demonstrably so atmospheric lensing or refraction that causes the sun angles not to apparently work on a planar surface. That's why they assumed that it was a sphere. But again, they were assuming that light always travels in straight lines, and we know now for 100% certain that is not the case, and it is not the Earth that is curving, but it is the light that is curving.
City in southern Egypt, where at noon on the summer solstice, the sun was directly overhead and the buildings cast no shadows. But at the same time in the northern city of Alexandria, the buildings did cast shadows, meaning the sun was at a different angle in the sky. On the day of the solstice, Eratosthenes stuck a stick in the ground in Alexandria and measured the angle of its shadow. Using the distance between the two cities, he was able to calculate the curvature of the Earth. You could actually perform the same experiment if you have a friend living a few miles away, or...
Right, so again, this is a flagship cornerstone proof of a spherical Earth, which relies strictly on the solar rays coming in at parallel angles, perfectly straight, and assuming that the Earth is a sphere, and then using spherical trigonometry to calculate the size of that hypothetical sphere. And I'm going to play a clip from Dr. Zach. He recently released a video that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I will comment on Dr. Zach's clip as we go, because I'm going to break away from this for a second. I may not even come back to this. This is just absurd. It's more of the same, and this is what you get when you search YouTube for flat Earth proof. So let's see if we can find Dr. Zach.
I'm going to show you how his math can be accurate when reality is completely different. I got another team from Indonesia right now, and their leader is named Boss Darling from the Flat Earth 101 channel. Please take a look at it and subscribe. Well, I planned an experiment and they did it, and it works as I planned. This experiment is gonna prove to you how we can convert a flat table to a round table. Yes, you heard me. We're gonna convert a flat table to a round table using mathematics and shadows.
Okay, so just playing that clip, basically what Dr. Zach did, I'm not going to play this video in its entirety, but I will put a link in the description because it's a really, really awesome thing. It's very, very nicely done, and it just goes to show how mathematics can be used to prove a thing that just doesn't happen to be true. So that's the thing about mathematics. If you go into an equation with certain axioms or certain preconceived laws or preconceived theories that you're going to adhere to during that equation, then you can literally prove a thing that isn't true whatsoever. So what he does is he takes this table and he puts nails, one in the center, and then equidistantly puts nails and rings around a light source overhead. And that light source is filtered through a concave or a convex lens one. I'm not sure which. I think he said a concave lens in the video, but it's irrelevant one way or another. It's a lens, a curved lens, and he also did it without the refractive lens in the light source overhead as well, but it was a local light source. And this flat table, based on the measurements that they got using the refractive lens, the table based on these trigonometry calculations of the vertical angle of the sun from each of these distances, using spherical trigonometry, assuming that the table is a sphere, you can mathematically prove that that table is indeed a sphere, mathematically sound. And it just so happened that the sphere, because they use these calculations of the shadow angle of the light from different locations at the same time and known distance between them, so you can triangulate on that light. But the radius of the spherical table in theory was the same as the radius of the concave lens that was used that the light passed through before casting the shadow on these nails. So it's mathematically sound and proven that this flat table is a sphere simply because you're assuming that the light is traveling in straight lines from a single source point. But that's not what's happening in reality. In reality, on the flat Earth, on the stationary plane Earth, the sun is indeed local, and the sunlight is not coming in at perfectly straight lines. I mean, we do see the convergent angles coming from the sun rays when the sun rays pass through clouds. Of course, these are called crepuscular rays, but this demonstrates nicely that the sun is indeed local, and it is indeed casting, you know, a divergent light source, as you would expect, as all light sources do. And so to claim that the sun would somehow cast shadows that get smaller and smaller to make your case for things like eclipses is just absurd. But so anyway, Dr. Zach did an excellent job of showing exactly what was done with the globe Earth. Eratosthenes assumed that the Earth was a sphere and assumed that the sunlight was coming in at nearly parallel angles from a practically infinitely distant, very, very distant light source, and assumed that the Earth was a sphere, and then took measurements of shadow angles at 2 locations and came up with a figure that is more or less still used to this day as the circumference of the Earth, or the radius of the Earth, right? Again, it shows exactly what was done with the globe Earth, proving that the globe Earth is a sphere, or proving that the flat Earth is a sphere due to ignorance of atmospheric lensing or atmospheric refraction. Now, what brings up an interesting question here, and maybe this is something that we should start looking for answers to, is the circumference of whatever sort of atmospheric bubble we're in on the flat Earth reality. It makes a lot of sense to me that the magnetic field of the Earth provides an electromagnetic static barrier to, at least, to sort of hold in or give pressure to the plane, or the atmosphere, if you will. We've got a local sun. We've got atmosphere that indeed behaves just as a lens in terms of how light behaves when passing through this atmospheric medium. So it brings up the question, is the diameter of the atmosphere that the sunlight is traveling through, is that the diameter that we're getting instead of the diameter of the spherical Earth? Because again, in this experiment, the diameter of the lens was what the spherical trigonometry showed was the circumference of the table, right? So very interesting stuff. I thought that was really well done. So yeah, check that out. So back to this. We'll go ahead and finish this up. Goodness, you know, I'm only 2 minutes and 37 seconds into that video. I know I talk too much, but these videos really just get under my skin, and I can't believe that this is in the top search results on YouTube for flat Earth proof.
Or if your friend is several hours west, you can get more proof that the Earth is round by calling them at sunset and asking how the sky looks. It will still be daylight there because of the Earth's curve. And
that's not true at all. The sun travels away from you as it sets, and it is absolutely 100% atmospheric refraction that aids in the operation of perspective, because again, the sun is fairly local. We don't know exactly how far it is, but it's somewhere apparently between 3,000 and 4,000 miles. I've heard, well, a friend of mine that is a civil engineer really did a lot of number crunching and physical observations and measurements, and assuming a flat Earth, and got the triangulation distance of 3926 miles. Now, he was not taking in atmospheric refraction into account for these measurements, so I believe it would have been off, although it is interesting that that number is very close to the alleged radius of the Earth itself. Again, that would be nearly 4,000 miles. Okay, so I find it interesting that Dr. Zach found that the spherical flat table was calculated to have a radius based on these shadow angles that was exactly the same thing as the radius of the convex lens, which the light was passing through to cast those shadows. So it seems that we do have something with this number 3926, because again, it is allegedly the radius of the spherical Earth. It is what you get a direct triangulation on the sun in terms of the distance to the sun, assuming a flat Earth without refraction. And so it just seems like maybe there is something to this number, although further testing is necessary. But to say that because the sun sets, therefore we live on a sphere is ridiculous, because again, all of these arguments have to do with light curving, and the people who came up with these arguments, you know, umpteen hundred years ago had no idea about atmospheric refraction. But it is a very real thing. It's not something that we're just making up to make our case seem better. It's something that absolutely 100% happens. Globe Earth proponents use it all the time to support their model, but they often use it, or actually necessarily use it, in the opposite sort of fashion that refraction typically works, to make their case seem better. So that's essentially fraud, at least lying. In terms of sunset, if the light from the sun is passing through more and more and more atmosphere as it travels laterally away from you, and so that will actually cause it to not only magnify, but also to drop lower and lower, along with perspective causing the sun to apparently drop lower and lower. The atmosphere, or the atmosphere simply does not allow light from the sun to travel infinitely distant through the thick atmosphere. The atmosphere sort of drags it down. The atmosphere slows it down. The light gets scattered. The light slows down, and it actually physically drops as it travels through more dense media. And the farther and farther light goes through dense media, such as the atmosphere lower to the ground, the less of a range the light has, and so it doesn't completely fizzle out until the sun has set. What happens is the sunlight is refracted downward as it's traveling away from you, and it simply appears to go over the horizon line because the light is not capable of traveling in a straight line any further. It's reached its limit, and it's curving down towards the ground at a certain distance from the sun, and it is in that position where you are in the twilight zone.
There's one more piece of clear evidence for the planet's shape. Pictures taken from space. Maybe you're not on Earth after all.
Pictures taken from space, so he shows us a cartoon. Okay, let's see some more cartoons of pictures of Earth from space.
And are actually watching this video from the space station, in which case...
No, they're not. There's nobody in the space station. The space station debunks itself. The fact that we can see the space station with the naked eye or with a common telescope proves that it is not 250 miles away. An object the size of a football field 250 miles away would simply not be visible to the naked eye or even to a regular old telescope. So again, the fact that we can see the ISS debunks NASA's claims about the ISS, and more than likely what you have is a high altitude spy plane, something like the U-2, possibly retrofitted with LEDs on the bottom. Because, you know, how are you going to see the ISS at night anyway? It's supposedly, what, reflecting sunlight as it's on the dark side of the Earth, in the Earth's pinpointer shadow? Sure, there's people in the ISS, and they're up there playing ping pong with water, and jumping around in gorilla suits, and growing lettuce for the first time, for the 10th time, whatever.
Please leave a comment, because that's so cool. If that's true, you'll have a bird's eye view of this giant blue and green globe.
Why is he showing a cartoon as if it's a picture of the Earth from space?
What a beautiful place to live. So what other myths about the Earth do you want me to explore? Let me know in the...
I want you to explore the myth about the Earth not being a spinning globe, because you didn't look into it yet. You just regurgitated what you've been told by the brainwashing campaigns known as the Federal Indoctrination Curriculum.
The comment section below. Do you love science?
No, not really. I don't. Well, yeah, I guess I do, but not scientism. So let's do flat Earth proof search one more time. Okay, so again, we got to go through all these garbage videos. This one is just awful. It really truly is. Where in the world is that video?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go. There's another one here that is only a minute 26. So we'll check that one out too. Again, this is in the top page search results. One of the first videos that isn't about the stupid rocket launch for Flat Earth Proof on YouTube. I mean, this is just absolutely creepy. It's creepy because there's tons of good content out there that proves Flat Earth, and this is what YouTube selects to put on the top search results. Because you can claim that it's all about algorithms and who watches what for longer, but I know that that's a load of garbage. I've been content creating and studying up on my YouTube for several years, and it doesn't matter how good or how well received or whatever, how good videos are. If it doesn't fit the narrative that is to be expected by certain entities, then it just isn't given, it isn't necessarily deleted, although there has been quite a bit of that going on lately. It isn't necessarily deleted, but it's just put in some obscure corner of their search results where anyone, who's daft enough to search for Flat Earth Proof on YouTube is going to get, just a load of garbage, in my opinion. I mean, just every last bit of it. So let's check out this one that's a minute 26. 5 ways you can prove the Earth is not flat. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I think I've already done a video about this. It's all the same stuff. It goes back to Aristotle, according to them. He noticed a round shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse. Ooh, where have we heard that before? That shadow was cast by the Earth. Do you see the assumption that you have to make these assumptions in order for it to work? Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do this. There was the other day when I did this search, and I was just astonished. I found one channel that I just really wanted to respond to. And so we get this CBS News article with Mark Sargent's face. I see that. That's good, I reckon. I think he did a pretty good job there. But it's sort of far down on that search result. There was one channel that was for the Globe that I was just entertained by it, and I wanted to do a response to it if I can possibly find it again. And you know what it is, of course, that rocket launch has taken up all of the slots of late. And yeah, that channel is not showing up here in the top search results as it was. And of course, I was searching Flat Earth Proof on YouTube, and one of the other top search results was a channel that made videos, sort of tongue-in-cheek videos, poking fun at flat earthers and how stupid they are. And the person delivering the message was just very unconvincing. Oh wow, so PewDiePie made a video about flat Earth. Wow, we gotta watch this. I'm really curious. Wow, that is awfully pink.
Michael, Vsauce here, and the Earth is actually flat. Don't believe me? Take it, PewDiePie.
What if the Earth is in fact flat and science has been wrong all along?
Thank you, PewDiePie. There you go. There you have it. The Earth is actually flat. Come on, gravity. If gravity is real, then how come I can't see it? Huh? Where is it? I'm still looking.
Okay, so I think we get the tone of that. 5 million views for, wow. That's what YouTube is going to promote, is this sort of thing. Just absolute nonsense. Somebody that might be making an effort to take the first step in researching flat Earth is going to find just garbage. No offense to any couple of decent videos that may have been peppered throughout here, but just in general, Flat Earth Proof is laden with nothing but, at least the top search results, laden with nothing but just absolute garbage. Some of the stuff towards the bottom, I don't know. I haven't definitely not watched all of this stuff, but maybe we can pick a couple random samples. So let's see what this guy has to say, getting 11,000 views in the last 5 days on Globe Believers Take Shots at My Flat Earth Proof. So let's check out Delano TV. Sometimes you find good stuff like this.
Watch some videos of
Was that the right one?
We gonna check it. We gonna give them a platform. Let's see what they got.
Are y'all totally burning hell?
Number one.
Just like dropping debris.
I'm gonna tell y'all motherfuckers that the earth is flat. It ain't no motherfucking ball. How the fuck you believe that?
Now look, I understand that you motherfuckers probably don't think that the earth is motherfucking flat. You think it's a motherfucking ball, and I really don't know how the fuck you believe.
Okay, so this is what comes up as flat earth proof, really? Okay. It's just more bubblegum, sort of silly after school sort of stuff that proves nothing, makes no sort of case or narrative at all whatsoever for flat earth, as far as I can tell. It's more of a parody, sitting there watching that silly cat. That cat's actually pretty funny. It's like an atheist cat or something. It's actually really kind of funny, but then again, it gets kind of weird. The cat gets a little weird. Anyway, yeah, it's just kind of depressing because it's just, I don't recognize anything that I would consider anything that I'm aware of, and I've watched a lot of flat earth videos, anything that I would consider pivotal in my journey in flat earth. I mean, there's tons of good stuff out there. I mean, I suppose a lot of it has now been deleted. Lots and lots of channels have been deleted, and a lot of the guys that were deleted had really diligent subscribers who kept backups of a lot of their stuff and were able to, or are able to, repost it. But it is a shame to see a lot of big channels just totally wiped out and their videos deleted from the servers. Big shame, right? Okay, so here goes one, the Truman, Flat Earth 29 proofs. It's an hour 24, and maybe I'm just trying to find, and maybe I didn't give all these a chance, but this one looks like it may have Flat Earth proofs in it, and we're way down in the search results here. Let's see, let's see, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 35, 40. Oh, wow. Yeah, probably 100 down in the search results. So that goes to show you how you do have to dig for, and let's just see, I don't even know what this one is. Don't think I've ever seen it. And I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the Truman. Maybe it will be a ray of hope in a search of garbage.
Flat Earth Proof 1. The level. It is the natural physics of water to find and maintain a level surface. So then, all bodies of water should conform to the curvature of the earth.
Okay, so maybe that one's good. That's a good way to wrap this up. So I guess we've been going for at least an hour because I'm going to cut some stuff into this as well. So with that, I'll wrap up for now. Thanks so much for joining me for this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and listen to me, and I'll surely talk to y'all real soon. If you guys want to support this channel and help me continue making future videos, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month to www.patreon.com/TheMorgile, or you can support the channel efforts directly through PayPal to www.paypal.me/TheMorgile. You can email me at themorgile@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. God bless you all. Spread the word, spread the world, and peace.
Make the earth shake. Make the earth shake. Make the earth shake. Make the earth shake.